And they're going to try to dismantle all of the very good evidence that we have on that. And that's going to be on vaccines and epidemiological research, and it's going to be on trans people. Hey everyone, it is Arden and Citrine here. I've got a clip here for you from The Line. So in this one, we get into discussions with caller Lumen about the threats that RFK Jr. and the Trump administration might pose to serious scientific inquiry in institutions and the potential for data to become corrupted. I think this is a really interesting conversation and taps into an anxiety that a lot of us are dealing with right now. So yeah, check it out. Also, like and subscribe before you go, or gonna squeeze you full of love. Do it. Get them. This is Lumen. They, them in California wants to have a conversation about prepping for accurate information with Trump taking office. So I don't know if this is the chatter who was asking for a similar topic, but it's basically the same thing. So Lumen, you are live with Arden and Steph. What's going on?
Hi, how are you guys doing today?
Pretty good.
I've talked to you before a few times, Arden, but under my old name, I went by Chase, but I'm changing my name, so
cool.
I've been
right
the whole time through my process. Yeah, so I'm worried about, with Trump's executive orders. So, a little of my background that I've shared before, but real concise. Grew up Jehovah's Witness, didn't know anything politics. And, coming into this the last 2-3 years, just trying to learn everything. So I don't functionally know how much of this is going to actually go through, but I've been reading a lot about Hitler and, the playbook that he used essentially, and how similar things are and how crazy Trump's supporters are. And so I'm thinking about stuff like, leaving the World Health Organization and terminating DEI and gutting the education department. Like, functionally, what is that going to mean for us? I'm trying to go to college. Is that going to mean that I'm going to start getting potentially disinformation? Or, how far back can this set us? How much should we expect? What ways potentially should we be fighting? I'm obviously trying to stay informed as much as I can, but it's so hard to be learning it and be fighting it at the same time. But I'm gonna do what I can. But I'm thinking if we start getting state media, and we're already seeing social media silencing free speech, and a lot of far right media on YouTube. But I'm wondering what things are going to become illegal, and if we're heading the direction of a police state,
yeah,
how can we stay well informed? Where can I be right now to keep up with the most accurate information on trans people as of right now? And then, if things start becoming illegal to even be educated on this stuff, then what do we do?
Yeah, I mean, I think kind of sidetrack note from that is if somebody out there has a lot of studies downloaded, I would highly recommend archiving them on a hard drive that you can keep, because again, I don't know how long a lot of this stuff is going to remain accessible. Not saying it will get taken down, but I think there's it's possible, kind of like you were hinting at, Lumen. So the big thing that I want to say on this is that I think there almost certainly will be an attempt to dismantle our systems of data and research and how we understand and how we come to be able to demonstrate a lot of things we believe, right? And a great example of this is that as RFK becomes our head of, the Department of Health and Human Services, he talks about the benefits of raw milk, right? Steph and I were having this conversation in the pre-show. Before the 1940s, when the first states started passing laws requiring pasteurization, milk-borne illness accounted for 25% of foodborne illnesses, right? That is a lot. And that comes from raw milk, not being pasteurized, because while there may be ostensibly some benefits or nutrients that could be in raw milk that could be beneficial, it's not worth the risk of when it goes bad. And they're going to try to dismantle all of the very good evidence that we have on that. And that's going to be on vaccines and epidemiological research, and it's going to be on trans people. And so I think what we need to do is have people educated on how to understand research. So when you're going to school for psychology, for example, you have to take 3 classes on research methodology, basically going over how do you understand like how good a study is, the quality of the data, are the conclusions that they're drawing from it valid? And these are things like the sample size. Bigger sample sizes are always going to lead to stronger data. That means the data is more representative. The sampling method is going to be important. Things like longitudinal data or meta-analyses also improve the evidentiary status of the data. There's things like the kinds of like evaluations they're doing on the participants. So, what kind of questions are they asking them? What kind of models are being made from that? And, after all that, once we have the results, what kind of conclusions can you actually draw from the results? Those are all questions you should be asking yourself every single time you see a study. They're going to release studies that are going to reaffirm like the Swedish study or reaffirm the Canadian study. I guarantee that is, obviously I can't see the future, but I'm very, very confident that is going to be something they're going to try to do. And so we need to be very vigilant about helping people understand how to evaluate the quality of an academic paper. Also, like looking at the, who's funding this paper, what institution published it. Those are all really important questions we need to be asking. So yeah, I think that's going to be a big thing. You need to understand how to determine the quality of an academic study, because that tells you the quality of the evidence. The reason we can dismiss things like the Canada study is because the participants, right? This is the like 80% of people desist claim. The participants were sourced as anyone who, well, not anyone, but people who attended this gender clinic, right? So they weren't inherently trans people that they were being evaluated. It was any child who, as parents had brought them to the clinic and consented to being a part of the study. So it's not surprising that in that population, you would both see a higher representation than the general public of trans people, like 5 to 20% based on different, things that people cite. But it's also not surprising that the majority of the kids who maybe are experiencing some gender aberrant behavior aren't actually trans and are maybe just queer or gay or just maybe a feminine straight cis man, cis boy. So yeah, we really need to understand how to evaluate the quality of evidence. This is a really big thing. I'm sure there are good research methodology classes online that you could find, probably for free. I haven't looked, but everything's on the internet for free. So I would highly recommend looking into that. I know my brain is geared for research and academia, so I like that stuff, but it's very dry for a lot of people. So maybe that's like the kind of content that's worth developing, is trying to explain that stuff to people in a way that's exciting. Yeah, those are my thoughts. Sorry, that was a lot, but go ahead, Steph.
The Canadian study I think that you're referring to was Ken Zucker, who basically at the Canadian Institute for Mental Health in Toronto was a practitioner of conversion therapy, among other things. And and all good things come from Ken. Ray Blanchard, same basic idea. You're going to see a revival of, as you were saying, Arden, you're going to see a revival or pushing these really garbage proposals from 20, 30 years ago. And even the whole rapid onset gender disorder thing. This is practiced. They are trying to do this. And what we need, in our conversation before the show, what we need is for the American Psychiatric Association, the College of the Endocrine Society, and all of these associations who have spent the time and done the real research that is peer reviewed, to speak up and say, this is the real deal. And I have quite a collection of that. I did some collections of real studies around the sports issue for U.S. Sailing when we were debating this issue as to how to proceed with all this stuff. And so, yeah, you're right. Download this stuff, read this stuff, and read the studies critically. Look into where the funding came from, what's is there an ideological axe to grind? And that I think it's worth remembering. You brought up the funny little guy with the funny mustache in a Central European country in the middle third of the 20th century. I think it's really important to remember the first thing that he did, the first place that they went with the brown shirts and the funny armbands, was the Institute for Sexual Research. We lost decades of real research.
First person to ever get bottom surgery was never seen again after that day. Don't know what happened.
We lost decades and decades and decades of research because of that. And yeah, you're right. That is definitely where this is going.
So hopefully that was a lot. Hopefully not to scare you, but yeah, I want to hear your thoughts, Lumen. Go ahead.
Well, I think it's kind of touching near what I'm worried about. But I think, and I could completely be over worried, but I think in unprecedented times, you never know how much is too much to worry. But I'm thinking, like, if the administration starts deleting all the research in the same way that they did in Germany, and they start putting forward biased studies, starting with the conclusion and looking for things to validate what they want to see instead of having unbiased research. Mm-hmm. And we don't have any future studies to combat the misinformation, at least not locally. That's kind of more the concern I'm thinking, because I understand, I mean, I need to do more studies, but for the most part, I generally understand how to kind of source through studies and, the bias points and what's anecdotal and, all of that. But I'm worried about if we lose our ability to continue doing accurate research and start going down the realm of only biased research. And then we have nothing to combat other than things that have been deleted off the internet. And again, I could be overthinking this. We might not be heading that route, but I don't know how much of this we should be thinking about.
You're muted, Steph.
I keep doing that. Okay. I think it's really important for the major medical associations to start taking a stand, because their livelihood is going to be threatened. I mean, if we have a situation where the emperor is sitting by the sea like King Canute and ordering the tide not to come in, that seems the analog to me. It's like, no, we're going to deny science. Yes, and we're going to deny science, whether it's around trans issues, issues of sexuality, or issues of food contamination, as Arden was saying. It's going to be important for people that know the science to speak up and say, hey, this is bullshit.
I agree it will be important, although I do think it's worth considering that it seems like one of their tactics is going to be threatening funding for organizations, hospitals, and individuals who support trans stuff in general, anything trans related. So I think it's not unlikely that a lot of them will do what they're told. And it's hard for me it's disgusting and despicable, and they need to have a spine and not do it. But also, if their funding is critical to the health and well-being of hundreds of thousands of other Americans, I understand why they would make the despicable fascist decision to throw trans people under the bus, because it's like a triage situation, right? It doesn't mean I'm endorsing it. I'm saying I think it's likely that could happen, and I would understand why. Yeah, I mean, I think as long as we are, keeping it, here's what I was going to say. I lost the thread, but I got it again. Man, now I'm losing it. Oh, where was it? Oh, yes. It's going to be a lot harder for them to do what they did in Germany when they destroyed the Sexual Institute documents, right? Because we live in the digital age. They are not going to be able to eliminate, we lost that data. Will never be recovered. Several years of the introductory data on trans and queer people will never be recovered. This data, they can remove it, but I think it's going to be almost impossible for them to completely destroy it in such a way that we will never recover it. So if there's any solace once we have found a way out of the fascist fucking hellscape, if we ever find a way out of the fascist fucking hellscape we live in, I don't think it's likely that we're going to be starting from zero in the same way that we did, following the destruction of the Sexual Institute in Germany. So I think there is some positivity to hold on to here. It's not all doom and gloom. I just want us to be realistic about like I said, I think it's going to get much worse than it is now. And it's pretty bad after Trump's first round of executive orders. So I think a lot of this stuff is likely. I don't know what's going to happen and what's not. But it's going to be almost impossible for them to accomplish what they did previously. So I think that is the one sort of saving grace. And that's why I'm like, if you have downloaded studies, if you've paid for them, or if you're at a university, save them on a hard drive, keep that somewhere, like one of those nice little cool hard drive storage unit things. Fucking keep it all safe and out of somewhere where you can get to it. That's going to be the kind of thing that lets that data survive long term. But yeah, is there anything else you want to add to that, Lumen? Hopefully we answered your question to some extent.
I was going to say, do you think realistically that, let's say we still have accurate information, is there potential that it becomes either we're so filtered because, all the CEOs are seemingly buddies with Donald Trump, and, we're already seeing a lot of censorship online, either making it illegal to spread this information accurately, like in the way that you guys and other activists do, or just, maybe not making it illegal, but we're so censored. And if that's the case, I'm wondering how we can continue with activism, especially because we know that protests could potentially become far more violent.
Yeah, it's very possible, is what I'll say. I mean, despite the denouncing of Project 2025, they have been heavily involved with all of Trump's first round of executive orders. They read almost word for word, like the ones that they purported that they would give him. Is it possible that we're going to see some sort of law about how, speaking about how transgenderism, which is not a thing, but that's how they're going to talk about it, is pornography, and the propagation of pornography is a criminal offense? That's entirely possible. I don't think that's too far-fetched to suspect is a possibility, but we're not there yet. And I also think take solace in, just like with this first executive order Trump passed, they're so stupid and so misinformed on what being trans is, that the language of the bills are very easily exploitable within the judicial system. And while I don't want to completely rely on the judicial system, it is going to be one of our main forms of resistance in a legislative sense to the things that they're pushing down the pipeline. So yes, they're probably going to try to do something like that, I think, but will it become enforced and actually in law? That remains to be seen. Just like with COVID, again, I want us to be alert, but not panicking. Like, let's pay attention to the signs. Let's make reasonable decisions, have your plans for how you can take care of yourself and your loved ones, but don't panic because things aren't quite there yet.
Yeah, to plan to survive, just plan to stick around and plan to survive. And what if worse comes to worse, then, worse came to worse. But, we've got to encourage that allyship that is real allyship, that really stands with us and really makes the point. I mean, we got good news and bad news, like the judge in Seattle who put the birthright citizenship EO on hold. That's good news. Bad news is Marco Rubio's State Department has now basically said, this just came out, has said, we're not going to change. We're not going to process any more applications for gender marker changes on passports. This is the State Department. We're not going to do that, and we're going to hold on to all the paperwork you sent in.
That's terrifying.
Down, which is scary. I mean, that is that. Mm-hmm. So the thing that worries me about this Trump administration is they're not going to be as incompetent as the first Trump administration. They are surgical about this. And they wrote 900 plus pages of what they're going to do. And they're going to do it, or at least they're going to try. And that's why it's going to be critical for people outside of marginalized groups, people with a voice. And that's even a voice within the Republican Party and within the donor class to say this is a bridge too far.
Mm-hmm.
We've got to develop and forge those alliances, and because we're a very, very, very tiny minority.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
We need Andrew Seidel's. We need people to be on our side in a way that isn't just, oh, gee, isn't it too bad about that? Too bad you're on the street. Too bad you're in the camps. Too bad. It's like, that's not allyship. That's just, I'm okay and fuck you.
Yeah.
Good.
That said, Lumen, we do really need to move on. We are almost at the hour here. So if you want to give any last thoughts, we will, we'd love to hear it. And then we're going to move on.
Yeah, I just appreciate the information. I'll be playing the call back again every time I call in. Before I let you go, I did want to say something the last time I called and I totally forgot. If you got 45 seconds.
45 seconds. Go for it.
Okay. I was calling my friend and or we scheduled a call and I scheduled it for after the transatlantic call. I told him I wasn't available for a couple hours and I was like, well, I technically was, but so I went through it and I was like, sorry, I was calling a call-in show called the Transatlantic. My friend goes, oh, with Arden? And I was like, yeah. And
so weird.
That's how I was able to come out to my friend. And that's when she came out to me as trans. And we grew up in the same cult in the same city. And I was like, what the fuck? So I just wanted to let you know that's so cool. You helped a lot of people, at least 2 people in my life. And thank you guys so much for your activism, what you're doing. Keep it up. Have a great day.
Thank you, Lumen. I really appreciate that.
Thanks, Lumen.
I will never recover from people knowing who I am through the show. That is so weird. So like, I started doing all this through COVID. So like, I very rarely, if ever, get recognized, and it's almost always as an extension of Matt. I think maybe one time someone has recognized me that wasn't through like, are you Matt Dillahunty? Oh, and you're also that person that's associated with him somehow. Yeah, that's so weird.